Kicking off the count tonight with story number 10 on our countdown. Clear signal, the so-called signal chat scandal. It's out of control. Democrats are now even calling for Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth to resign over these revelations that top national security officials discussed sensitive attack plans on Yemen over the messaging app and mistakenly added a journalist to the text chain. President Trump says it's another witch hunt and that the encrypted app could be defective. The White House says that the Atlantic editor-in-chief who was involved, Jeffrey Goldberg, is well known for his sensationalist spin, and Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt also posting to X that no war plans were discussed and no classified material was sent on the thread either. And Secretary Hegseth also reiterating that no war plans were ever texted. So let's continue this discussion. Let's welcome in former senior advisor in the Trump and Bush administrations and senior fellow at the Center for the National Interest, Christian Witten. Also with us is the director of Research and Government Accountability Institute, Seamus Bruner. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Lydia.
Christian, first, let's talk about that fail instead of what the text said, including the outsider, this journalist, this editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, Jeffrey Goldberg, on the group chat. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz invited him to the conversation. Clearly, there was a mistake made, right? There was a mistake made. But, Christian, also, this guy waited 13 days. 13 days before he said something. Where is the accountability for this journalist? I mean, I've been added to text chains a couple of times, and I said, wait, I shouldn't be on this. And yet he waited 13 days before he said something. What do you think about where's the accountability for this guy?
Well, clearly, yes, he relished the opportunity to have a front row view of this discussion. And I think that's the real tragedy of this event. I don't think anything particularly bad was revealed about this. The strikes were the ones that were described by Secretary Hegseth were very formulaic for when we attack targets in the Middle East. It's a combination of Hornets and Tomahawks. But the real tragedy is that it's given relevance back to The Atlantic, which is a dying former magazine, of course, just online now, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, he should have fessed up earlier. He should have drawn attention if he really was concerned about national security or that he might come into possession of classified information. But ultimately, responsibility is whoever had his number at the NSC. And there is some concern that NSC staffers, some of them might actually be a little too close to reporters on the left. Someone had his number. It got in there somehow. We still haven't gotten a complete explanation. But at the end of the day, it showed a national security team that is cohesive, that was having good deliberations about communications, and I don't think anything was compromised that was particularly sensitive.
No, and Pete Hegseth said that, and apparently Waltz, he's taking responsibility. The president is standing up for him, saying he's a good man, that he learned a lesson, blaming a staffer for putting Goldberg's number in the National Security Advisor's home. So Seamus, what is the lesson to be learned here? I think a lesson has been learned, but like what Christian just said, also, some of these reporters are a little too close for comfort, because as a journalist myself, I think our job is to speak for those who can't speak for themselves, hold the unaccountable accountable, separate fact from fiction, not jeopardize national security, because this guy waited 13 days. Who's to say someone else that shouldn't have been in that text group was on it? Do you know what I'm saying? So that's why I keep kind of bringing it back to this journalist getting a little too close for comfort to this sensitive information here.
Yeah, Lydia, you're exactly right. He should never have been on there. I'm mystified as to why he was on there. And Christian's exactly right. I think this gives way too much relevance. Jeffrey Goldberg couldn't be more happy that he was left on there. He should have made himself known immediately. The fact he waited for so long just shows that the left is desperate for some sort of whiff of a setback with the Trump administration. If this is the best they've got to keep looking, because this is a nothing burger.
You know, and then, of course, The Atlantic then published a full text chain the next day, detailing drone targets, attack sequences, the type of weaponry used. So there was 2 articles. So during the 13 days that he knew he shouldn't have been on this, he was clearly writing the articles, because as soon as he then alerted the White House, Christian, 2 hours later, he published the article. It seems like this journalist cared more. I keep bringing it back to him. He cared more about this fame, this notoriety, this infamy the national security. What do you think, Christian?
Yeah, I think that's right. It wasn't just he who wrote a story about, hey, I got added to this text chain. Isn't that interesting? He had another journalist working on it. They were trying to track down whether they were being doxxed or spoofed by a foreign intelligence agency. Not that any would really care what's going on the Atlantic anyway. But clearly they saw this as a big opening. You know, I think a lot of media, it's not just the Atlantic, it's Politico, it's the Washington Post, all these supposedly marquee names. And if you look, they have no sources whatsoever in the Trump administration. Politico put something out that someone close to the White House gave them a scoop. I mean, that could be one of the bums outside on Pennsylvania Avenue, and it may very well have been. So it was really unique for Goldberg to get access because so much of the establishment left media just doesn't have access. What we've seen so far in Trump is the complete opposite of Trump 1, where people were leaking to things like the New York Times and other left-wing outlets. Instead, this team, very cohesive, very much focused on what the president wants and accomplishing that and not trying to play the one-upmanship Washington game you win by leaking to the liberal media.
Right. And then you notice, Seamus, they of course, the fake news media, they pick and choose what stories they want to cover. You don't hear them talking about the top MS-13 gang member that was captured. You don't have them showing that video of the Venezuelans that were mostly men on the plane, right? No women and children there. All these great things that President Trump is doing right in the course of this ship. Instead, they're holding on to this one story for dear life. And even Hillary Clinton writing an op-ed for the New York Times saying this is just dumb. Seamus, I know. I wanted to get your reaction to Hillary Clinton, of all people, having the audacity to write an op-ed about this.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, she's clinging to relevance. She's trying to be relevant. And it's even more egregious. They never covered the 13 dead in Afghanistan. They barely covered Lloyd Austin when he was defense secretary going AWOL. They're treating this like it's a bigger scandal than those two things. And it's not. I mean, so the left-wing media is a joke, and they're clinging to relevance.
We're going to leave it right there, gentlemen. Christian and Seamus, thank you both so much for joining us.